Imagine this scenario. You're working on a commissioned art piece worth thousands of dollars when your 11-year-old niece deliberately destroys it, then laughs in your face. Would you stay quiet to keep family peace? Or would you finally say what everyone's been too afraid to address? That's exactly where I found myself last Thanksgiving. What should have been a warm family gathering became the moment that exposed years of enabling behavior and forced us all to confront some uncomfortable truths. The aftermath changed our family forever in ways none of us saw coming. Let me tell you what happened next. The setup. Hello, Reddit. My name is Marcus, and I'm a 34-year-old freelance graphic designer and digital artist living in Portland, Oregon. I work primarily with small businesses and independent clients, creating everything from logos to large-scale digital art installations. It's not always steady income, but it's work I'm passionate about, and I've built a decent reputation over the past 8 years. I live alone in a converted loft downtown that doubles as my studio space. Before moving out 3 years ago, I spent most of my 20s living with my mom, Elena, in our family home in suburban Beaverton. My dad passed away when I was 19, and I stayed to help with expenses and to make sure mom wasn't alone during those difficult early years of widowhood. The dynamic in our house shifted dramatically 2 years ago when my older sister Rachel moved back from Los Angeles with her husband, Kevin, and their daughter, Sophia. Rachel had been trying to make it as an actress for nearly a decade, but a series of failed auditions and mounting debt forced them to give up their California dreams and return to Oregon. Initially, everyone agreed it would be temporary, just until they could save enough money to get their own place. Rachel promised they'd be out within 6 months, maybe a year at most. But as time passed, it became clear they were settling in for the long haul. At first, I tried to be understanding. I knew how crushing it must have been for Rachel to admit defeat and move back home at 32. I remembered her excitement when she first left for LA, convinced she'd be the next big thing. Coming back felt like a public acknowledgement that those dreams were over. But living with them again after years of independence proved more challenging than any of us anticipated. The house that had been peaceful and organized suddenly felt chaotic and crowded, and at the center of that chaos was Sophia, the problem child. Sophia was 11 years old, and from the moment they moved in, it was clear she had no understanding of boundaries or respect for other people's belongings. Rachel and Kevin had always been permissive parents, believing that restricting a child's natural impulses would stifle her creativity and self-expression. The problem was that Sophia's self-expression usually came at someone else's expense. She would wander into my room when I wasn't there, playing with expensive equipment I needed for work. When I politely asked her to stay out of my space, Rachel would smile and say, "She's just curious, Marcus. Don't be so uptight." She would interrupt important client calls by bursting into whatever room I was in, demanding attention. When I explained that I was working, Kevin would shrug and say, "Kids will be kids. She just wants to spend time with her uncle." She would touch wet paintings I was working on, leaving fingerprints on commissioned pieces. When I expressed frustration, both parents would insist it was an accident and that I was overreacting. Each incident was brushed off as normal childhood behavior, but the pattern was clear to me. Sophia had never been taught that other people's things mattered, that other people's work mattered, or that other people's feelings mattered. She was the center of her universe, and her parents had never bothered to expand that universe to include basic consideration for others. The breaking point came on Thanksgiving Day 2023. Thanksgiving disaster. That year, we decided to host Thanksgiving at Mom's house for the first time since Dad passed away. It felt like a symbolic step forward, a sign that our family was healing and moving into a new chapter together. Mom had spent days preparing, and the house smelled amazing. Traditional turkey with all the fixings, homemade cranberry sauce, 3 different types of pie. Rachel and Kevin pitched in with side dishes, and for a brief moment, it actually felt like we were functioning as a happy, normal family. I had been working on a major commission for the past 6 weeks, a large digital art piece for a tech startup's headquarters. The client was paying $8,000 for the completed work, which represented nearly 2 months of income for me. I was in the final stages, making small adjustments and preparing the high-resolution files for delivery the following Monday. The artwork was displayed on my main monitor in my room upstairs, with backup files saved across multiple devices. I'd been meticulous about protecting this project because it represented not just money, but a potential gateway to more corporate clients. During dinner preparation, I got a call from the client asking for a preview of the final piece. They wanted to show it to their board of directors over the weekend and needed the image file immediately. I excused myself from the kitchen and went upstairs to export a high-quality preview. While I was uploading the file and responding to their email, I realized I'd left my external hard drive in the car. This drive contained additional assets the client might want to see, so I decided to grab it quickly before they called back. I stepped out to the garage, retrieved the drive, and was walking back toward the house when I heard a loud crash from upstairs, followed by what sounded like glass breaking. I ran up the stairs, taking them two at a time, and found my bedroom door wide open. Inside, Sophia was standing next to my desk, holding a baseball bat that belonged to her father. My primary monitor, a $1,200 professional display, was completely shattered. Glass covered my desk, my keyboard, and the floor around my workspace. But the monitor wasn't the worst part. When I looked at my computer tower, I could see that she'd taken the bat to that as well. The side panel was dented and cracked, and when I tried to turn it on, nothing happened. The machine was completely dead. I stood in the doorway, staring at the destruction, trying to process what I was seeing. 6 weeks of work, gone. Thousands of dollars in equipment destroyed. My livelihood literally shattered across my bedroom floor. "Sophia," I said, my voice barely controlled, "what did you do?" She turned to look at me, and what I saw in her expression wasn't guilt or fear or even surprise at being caught. It was amusement. She was smiling. "I was pretending your computer was a piñata," she said cheerfully, like this explained everything. "It made such a cool sound when it broke." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a moment of poor judgment. This was deliberate destruction, carried out for her own entertainment, with complete disregard for the consequences. "Do you understand what you've done?" I asked, my voice getting louder. "Do you have any idea what you've just destroyed?" Her smile faded slightly, but not because she was realizing the magnitude of what she'd done. She looked annoyed that I wasn't sharing her excitement about the cool sound. "It's just a computer," she said with a shrug. "You can get another one." That response, that casual dismissal of something that represented months of my life and livelihood, broke something inside me. "Get out," I said, my voice shaking. "Get out of my room right now." For the first time, Sophia looked uncertain. Maybe it was the tone in my voice, or maybe she was finally starting to understand that this wasn't a game. She dropped the bat and ran out of the room. I stood there alone, surrounded by the ruins of my workspace, trying to figure out how I was going to explain to my client that their $8,000 project had just been destroyed by an 11-year-old with a baseball bat. The confrontation, I spent about 10 minutes upstairs, trying to salvage what I could from my computer and assess the full extent of the damage. When I was certain that everything was truly lost, I walked downstairs to find the family gathered around the dining table, getting ready to serve dinner. Sophia was sitting next to Rachel, whispering something in her mother's ear. When she saw me coming down the stairs, she quickly looked away and grabbed onto Rachel's arm. "We need to talk," I announced to the room. "All of us." Mom looked up from the turkey she was carving. "What's wrong, honey? You look upset." "Sophia just destroyed my computer and monitor with a baseball bat," I said, keeping my voice as steady as possible. "She destroyed 6 weeks of work and about $10,000 worth of equipment and commissioned art." The room went completely silent. Kevin stopped mid-conversation with Mom. Rachel's face went white. Sophia buried her face against her mother's shoulder. "That can't be right," Rachel said quickly. "Sophia wouldn't do something like that. Are you sure it wasn't an accident?" "I'm sure," I replied. "She told me she was pretending my computer was a piñata. She said she liked the sound it made when it broke." Kevin leaned forward in his chair. "Now hold on, Marcus. That sounds pretty far-fetched. Maybe you misunderstood what she was trying to tell you." I stared at him in disbelief. "Misunderstood? Kevin, my monitor is completely shattered. My computer tower is dented and destroyed. There's glass all over my floor. What exactly do you think I misunderstood?" "Well," Rachel interjected, "maybe she was just playing and things got out of hand. You know how kids are when they get excited." "She had a baseball bat," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "She didn't accidentally destroy thousands of dollars worth of equipment. She did it on purpose, for fun." Mom set down the carving knife and looked at Sophia, who was still clinging to Rachel. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "is what Uncle Marcus is saying true? Did you break his computer?" Sophia looked up at her grandmother with wide, innocent eyes. "I was just playing," she said in a small voice. "I didn't know it would make him so mad." That response, the way she framed herself as the victim of my unreasonable anger rather than acknowledging what she'd done, made me realize that this wasn't just about the destroyed equipment. This was about years of enabling behavior that had taught Sophia she could do anything she wanted without consequences. "You didn't know it would make me mad?" I repeated. "You destroyed my workspace with a baseball bat, and you didn't think that might upset me?" "Marcus," Kevin said sharply, "she's just a kid. You're being way too harsh." "I'm being too harsh? Kevin, she destroyed my livelihood. I have a client expecting a finished project on Monday morning, and now I have nothing to deliver. I have thousands of dollars in damaged equipment that I can't afford to replace. How exactly am I supposed to react to this?" "It's just stuff," Rachel said dismissively. "Insurance will cover it. You can recreate the artwork. Nobody died." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Just stuff? Rachel, this is how I make a living. This isn't a hobby or a side project. This is my career. And your daughter just destroyed months of my work because she thought it would be fun. She made a mistake, Rachel shot back. She's 11 years old, Marcus. She doesn't understand the value of things like that. Then maybe it's time she learned, I said. The room fell silent again. I could see everyone processing what I just said, and I could tell they didn't like the implication that Sophia might actually need to face consequences for her actions. Mom cleared her throat. Maybe we should all take a step back and... No, I interrupted. I'm tired of taking steps back. I'm tired of making excuses for behavior that would be unacceptable from an adult. Sophia is old enough to understand that destroying other people's property is wrong. She's old enough to understand that actions have consequences. I turned to look directly at Sophia, who was still hiding behind her mother but peeking out to watch the conversation. Sophia, I said, I want you to apologize for what you did, and I want you to explain to me why it was wrong. She looked up at Rachel as if seeking permission to respond. Rachel nodded slightly. I'm sorry, Sophia mumbled, barely audible. Sorry for what? I pressed. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, in an even smaller voice, sorry for breaking your computer. And why was that wrong? Another long pause. Because it made you sad? I felt my heart sink. Even now, after everything that had happened, she still didn't understand. She thought the problem was my emotional reaction, not her destructive behavior. No, Sophia, I said. It was wrong because you destroyed something that didn't belong to you. It was wrong because you hurt someone else's livelihood. It was wrong because you made a choice to be destructive when you could have made a choice to be respectful. She stared at me blankly, and I realized that these concepts were genuinely foreign to her. She'd never been taught to think about how her actions affected other people. Kevin stood up from his chair. Okay, I think that's enough. She apologized. She feels bad about what happened. Let's not turn this into some kind of philosophical lecture about consequences. She doesn't feel bad, I said. She feels bad that everyone is upset with her, but she doesn't understand what she did wrong. And that's the problem. The problem, Rachel said, her voice getting louder, is that you're expecting an 11-year-old to think like an adult. She made a mistake. She said she was sorry. What more do you want? I want her to understand that actions have consequences, I replied. I want her parents to stop making excuses for destructive behavior. I want this family to acknowledge that what happened here was not okay. And what do you expect us to do about it? Kevin asked. Ground her for the rest of her life? Make her pay you back out of her allowance? I expect you to replace what she destroyed, I said. All of it. The monitor, the computer, and compensation for the lost artwork. The room erupted. The explosion. Are you insane? Rachel shouted. Do you have any idea how much money you're talking about? About $10,000, I replied calmly, which is exactly how much your daughter cost me today. We don't have that kind of money, Kevin said. We're barely making ends meet as it is. Then maybe you should have thought about that before letting your daughter run wild with a baseball bat, I shot back. She didn't mean to. Rachel started crying then. Not the manipulative tears that Sophia had learned to use, but genuine tears of frustration and desperation. We don't have anywhere to go, she sobbed. We don't have enough money for a deposit on an apartment. We don't have anyone else who can take us in. You're literally making us homeless. No, I said, feeling my own throat tighten with emotion. You're making yourselves homeless. I gave you a week to come up with a solution. I offered multiple opportunities for compromise. You chose to dig in your heels and insist that what happened wasn't a big deal. Because it wasn't, she screamed through her tears. It was an accident. She's a child. Why can't you understand that? Because it wasn't an accident, I said firmly. And deep down, you know it wasn't. Sophia took a baseball bat to my workspace because she wanted to see what would happen. She told me she was pretending my computer was a piñata. That's not an accident. That's a deliberate choice to be destructive. Mom stood up slowly, her face pale and drawn. Maybe there's another way. There is no other way, I said. Not unless Sophia faces real consequences for what she did, and Rachel and Kevin acknowledged that their parenting approach isn't working. Our parenting approach is fine, Kevin said defensively. Is it? I asked. Because your daughter just destroyed $10,000 worth of property for fun, and your response was to make excuses for her. If that's fine parenting, then I'd hate to see what bad parenting looks like. The dinner ended with Rachel and Kevin storming upstairs, Sophia trailing behind them in tears, and Mom sitting alone at the table, staring at her untouched plate. I spent the rest of the evening in my destroyed workspace, trying to salvage what I could and beginning the process of filing insurance claims and explaining to my client why I wouldn't be able to deliver their project on time. The aftermath. True to their word, Rachel and Kevin found somewhere else to go. Kevin's brother in Seattle came through with temporary housing, and by the following Saturday, they were packing their belongings into a rented U-Haul truck. The week leading up to their departure was tense and cold. Rachel and Kevin spoke to me only when absolutely necessary, and Sophia avoided me entirely. Mom tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy, but the strain was showing on her face. On their last morning, as they were loading the final boxes into the truck, Sophia approached me hesitantly. "Uncle Marcus?" she said in a small voice. "Yes, sweetheart? Are you still mad at me?" I knelt down to her level, looking into her eyes. Despite everything that had happened, she was still my niece, and I still loved her. "I'm not mad at you, Sophia," I said gently. "I'm disappointed by the choice you made, but I'm not mad at you as a person. Will I ever be able to come visit you again?" That question broke my heart. "I hope so," I said honestly, "but that depends on whether you can learn to make better choices." "I promise I'll be good," she said quickly. "It's not about being good," I said. "It's about understanding that your choices affect other people. It's about thinking before you act. It's about taking responsibility when you make mistakes." She nodded solemnly, though I wasn't sure how much she actually understood. Rachel appeared behind her, placing a protective hand on Sophia's shoulder. "Say goodbye to Uncle Marcus, honey. We need to get going." Sophia hugged me tightly, and I found myself fighting back tears. Whatever mistakes her parents had made, she was still just a kid trying to navigate a confusing world. I hoped that someday she'd learn the lessons her parents seemed unwilling to teach her. After they drove away, Mom and I stood in the driveway, watching the truck disappear around the corner. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked quietly. "I think we did the necessary thing," I replied. Whether it was right remains to be seen. 6 months later. In the months that followed, I slowly rebuilt my workspace and my business. The insurance covered most of the equipment costs, though I had to fight for every penny. The client was understanding about the delay, though they ultimately decided to go with a different artist for future projects. I couldn't blame them. The house felt strange without Rachel, Kevin, and Sophia. Quieter, certainly, but also lonelier. Mom seemed to age years in the span of months, the stress of the family conflict taking its toll on her health and spirits. Rachel and I exchanged occasional text messages, polite but distant updates about work and health. She never mentioned Sophia's behavior or acknowledged that there had been any problems beyond my overreaction to a childhood accident. Then in March, I received an unexpected phone call from Kevin. "Marcus," he said, his voice tired and strained. "I need to talk to you." "Okay," I said, surprised to hear from him. "We're having problems with Sophia," he continued. "Big problems. She's been acting out at school, getting into fights, destroying other kids' projects. The teachers say she has no respect for authority and no understanding of boundaries." I felt a familiar sinking feeling in my stomach. "I'm sorry to hear that." "The school counselor wants to meet with us," Kevin continued. "She says Sophia shows signs of what she calls consequence deficit disorder. Basically, she's never learned that actions have consequences because we've always protected her from them." I stayed silent, letting him process whatever realization he was coming to. "She destroyed another kid's science project last week," Kevin said. "Just knocked it off the table because she thought it was ugly. When the teacher asked her why she did it, she said it was just a stupid project, and the other kid could make another one." The parallel to her destruction of my artwork was so obvious that I wondered if Kevin was finally starting to understand. "The other kid's parents are threatening to sue us," he continued. "The school is talking about suspension or expulsion, and when we try to discipline Sophia at home, she just throws tantrums until Rachel gives in. What do you want from me?" I asked, though I thought I knew the answer. "I want to know how to fix this," he said. "The counselor says we need to start setting firm boundaries and enforcing real consequences, but every time we try, Sophia just falls apart. Rachel can't stand to see her cry, so she always backs down." "Kevin," I said gently, "this is exactly what I was trying to tell you 6 months ago." "I know," he said quietly. "I know, and I'm sorry. You were right, and we were wrong. We thought we were protecting her by shielding her from consequences, but we were actually hurting her." It was the first time anyone in my family had acknowledged that my concerns had been valid. "So what now?" I asked. "Now we try to undo years of damage," he said. "The counselor recommended a family therapist who specializes in behavioral issues. We start next week." "That's good," I said. "That's a really good step." "Marcus," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "I owe you an apology. A real one. You were trying to help Sophia learn an important lesson, and we made you the villain for it. We were so focused on protecting her feelings that we forgot to protect her future." I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "Thank you," I said. "That means a lot." "Do you think—" He paused, then continued. "Do you think there's any chance we could start over? Not move back in or anything like that, but maybe rebuild our relationship?" "I'd like that," I said honestly, "but only if you're serious about addressing these issues with Sophia." "We are," he said firmly. "We have to be. The counselor says if we don't start setting boundaries now, Sophia could end up with serious problems as an adult, relationship issues, job problems, legal troubles, all because she never learned that the world doesn't revolve around her." It was exactly what I'd been afraid of and exactly what I'd been trying to prevent. 1 year later, today, marks exactly 1 year since the Thanksgiving incident that changed everything. As I write this, I'm sitting in my rebuilt workspace, looking at the new monitor and computer that replaced the ones Sophia destroyed. The relationship between our family has slowly begun to heal, though it's been a long and difficult process. Rachel and Kevin followed through on their commitment to therapy. It took several months, but they eventually learned to set and enforce consistent boundaries with Sophia. The process was painful. Sophia fought every new rule and consequence with epic tantrums, but they stuck with it. Sophia herself has made remarkable progress. She's learning to think before she acts, to consider how her choices affect other people, and to take responsibility when she makes mistakes. She's not perfect. She's still just a 12-year-old kid, but she's becoming the kind of person I always hoped she could be. Last month, she sent me a handwritten letter apologizing for destroying my computer. Not the rehearsed apology her mother coached her through, but a genuine expression of understanding about how her actions had affected me. She used her own allowance money to buy me a small gift, a desk organizer for my new workspace, along with a promise that she would never again touch something that didn't belong to her without permission. Rachel and I are slowly rebuilding our sisterly relationship. She's acknowledged that their old parenting approach wasn't working and has thanked me for forcing them to confront the problem before it got worse. It's taken time for the trust to rebuild, but we're getting there. Mom is much happier now that the family is healing. She's been able to maintain a relationship with both her children and her granddaughter without having to choose sides or make excuses for anyone's behavior. As for me, I've learned some important lessons too. I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to hold them accountable for their actions, even when it's painful. I've learned that enabling destructive behavior in the name of family harmony actually destroys families rather than protecting them. And I've learned that children are more resilient than we give them credit for. They can handle consequences and boundaries better than adults often assume. The larger lesson. Looking back on everything that happened, I realized that this story isn't really about a broken computer or a misbehaving child. It's about the difference between protecting someone and enabling them. Rachel and Kevin thought they were protecting Sophia by shielding her from consequences. In reality, they were setting her up for a lifetime of problems. They were teaching her that other people's feelings don't matter, that other people's property is disposable, and that she could get away with anything as long as she cried hard enough afterwards. If I had stayed silent that Thanksgiving, if I had just absorbed the cost of her destruction and moved on, I would have been enabling that pattern. I would have been teaching Sophia that some people exist to clean up her messes without complaint. By holding firm on consequences, by refusing to let her destructive behavior be swept under the rug, I forced the entire family to confront some uncomfortable truths. It wasn't pleasant and it wasn't easy, but it was necessary. The hardest part was realizing that sometimes love means being willing to be the bad guy. Sometimes love means letting someone face the natural consequences of their actions, even when those consequences are painful. Sometimes love means prioritizing someone's character development over their immediate comfort. If I had to do it over again, I would make the same choices. Not because I enjoyed the conflict or wanted to hurt anyone, but because I could see where the path we were on was leading. I could see Sophia growing up to be an entitled, destructive adult who blamed everyone else for her problems. I could see Rachel and Kevin enabling increasingly serious behavioral issues until they spiraled out of control. By forcing a crisis when the stakes were relatively low, a broken computer and hurt feelings, we were able to address the underlying issues before they became much more serious problems. Final thoughts. As I finish writing this story, I want to address the question that's probably on many of your minds. Was I wrong to take such a hard line with an 11-year-old child? I've thought about that question every day for the past year, and my answer is no. Not because I enjoyed causing pain or conflict, but because the alternative was worse. If I had let it slide, Sophia would have learned that she could destroy anything she wanted without facing real consequences. She would have continued to grow up believing that other people's property, work, and feelings were less important than her momentary impulses. And the next victim might not have been as patient as I was. The next victim might have been a teacher who had her expelled, or a friend's parent who pressed charges, or an employer who fired her, or a romantic partner who left her. By forcing her to confront consequences in a controlled family environment, we gave her the chance to learn and grow before the stakes got much higher. Children need boundaries. They need to understand that their actions affect other people. They need to learn that respect for others isn't optional. It's essential to functioning in society. Parents who refuse to enforce these lessons because they don't want their children to be upset are doing those children a tremendous disservice. They're prioritizing short-term comfort over long-term character development. And family members who enable this dynamic, who stay silent when they see destructive behavior being excused, are part of the problem. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is speak up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it causes conflict, even when it makes you the bad guy. Love isn't just about making someone happy in the moment. Love is about helping someone become the best version of themselves, even when that process is difficult and painful. So to answer my original question, yes, I would do it again. Not because I wanted to hurt anyone, but because I wanted to help everyone. And sometimes helping means being willing to be temporarily hated for doing what's right. Update. 2 years later, I'm adding this update because I think it's important for people to see how this story ended. Sophia is now 13 years old, and she's a completely different kid than she was 2 years ago. She's respectful, thoughtful, and genuinely pleasant to be around. She asks permission before touching other people's things. She apologizes when she makes mistakes. Real apologies that show understanding, not just attempts to make the anger stop. She helps with household chores without being asked and has started volunteering at a local animal shelter. More importantly, she's happy. Genuinely happy in a way that she never was when she was running wild without boundaries. She has friends now, real friends who enjoy spending time with her, not just kids who tolerated her behavior because their parents forced them to play together. Her grades have improved dramatically because she's learned to take responsibility for her schoolwork instead of making excuses when assignments are late or incomplete. Rachel and Kevin have become much better parents. They still struggle sometimes. Old habits die hard, but they've learned to prioritize their daughter's character development over her immediate emotional comfort. They set clear expectations, enforce consistent consequences, and follow through on what they say they're going to do. Our family gatherings are actually enjoyable now. There's no tension, no walking on eggshells, no waiting for the next incident to explode. Sophia contributes to conversations, helps in the kitchen, and treats everyone with respect. Last Christmas, exactly 2 years after the incident that started this whole story, Sophia gave me a framed photo of the two of us together, along with a card that said, "Thank you for caring enough to teach me right from wrong, even when it was hard." That card is hanging in my office right now, next to my computer that she no longer tries to destroy. The point is this: children are remarkably resilient and adaptable. They can learn new patterns of behavior much faster than adults often assume. But they need adults who are willing to be the bad guy temporarily in order to help them become good people permanently. If you're dealing with a similar situation, whether it's your own child, a niece or nephew, or any child in your life who's exhibiting destructive behavior, I encourage you to speak up. Don't enable the behavior in the name of keeping peace. Don't make excuses for actions that you know are wrong. Don't prioritize a child's temporary comfort over their long-term character development. It won't be easy. You might be the bad guy for a while. The child might hate you temporarily, and their parents might resent your interference. But if you can stick to your principles and maintain appropriate consequences, you might just help that child learn lessons that will serve them for the rest of their lives. And isn't that worth a little temporary conflict? The family that emerges from that conflict, if everyone is willing to do the hard work of growth and change, will be stronger, healthier, and happier than the family that existed before. I know mine is. So Reddit, I have to ask, do you think I was wrong to take such a hard line with my 11-year-old niece? Should I have just absorbed the cost of her destruction to keep family peace? Or was I right to demand consequences even though it caused a major family rift? I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially from parents who have dealt with similar behavioral issues. How do you balance compassion with accountability? How do you help children learn from their mistakes without crushing their spirits? Thanks for reading this incredibly long story. If it resonated with you, please share your own experiences in the comments. Sometimes we all need to know that we're not alone in dealing with these difficult family dynamics. D. Yes, she did, I interrupted. She absolutely meant to destroy my equipment. She told me she was pretending it was a piñata. She said she liked the sound it made when it broke. This wasn't an accident, Rachel. This was deliberate destruction. Mom tried to interject. Everyone, please, let's just... No, Mom, I said. I'm done pretending this is normal. I'm done pretending that Sophia's behavior is acceptable. I'm done walking on eggshells because everyone's afraid to admit that there's a problem here. The only problem here, Kevin said, his face red with anger, is you making a huge deal out of nothing. Kids break things. It happens. You're acting like she committed some kind of crime. She destroyed $10,000 worth of property, I yelled. If anyone else did that, it would be a crime. She's a child, Rachel screamed back. She's old enough to know better, I replied. Sophia started crying. Not the genuine tears of a child who understands she's done something wrong, but the manipulative wailing of someone who's learned that tears make the angry voices stop. Immediately, both Rachel and Kevin rushed to comfort her, shooting accusatory looks in my direction as if I was the one who'd done something wrong. Look what you've done, Rachel said, stroking Sophia's hair. You've traumatized her. I stared at them in disbelief. I've traumatized her? She destroyed my livelihood, and I'm the bad guy because I'm upset about it? She's just a baby, Kevin said. She doesn't understand what she did. She's 11 years old, I said. When I was 11, I understood that breaking other people's things was wrong. When you were 11, you understood that. Why doesn't she? Neither of them had an answer for that. Mom finally stood up from her chair. That's enough, she said firmly. Everyone sit down and let's figure this out like adults. But I was done sitting down. I was done trying to figure things out. I was done being the reasonable one while everyone else made excuses for increasingly unreasonable behavior. There's nothing to figure out, I said. Sophia destroyed my property. Her parents need to replace it. That's it. We can't afford. Rachel started. Then you'll have to figure out how to afford it, I said. Because I'm not eating the cost of your daughter's destructive behavior anymore. Kevin stepped toward me, his face twisted with anger. Anymore? What's that supposed to mean? It means this isn't the first time, I said. It's just the worst time. Sophia has been destroying things and disrespecting people since the day you moved in here, and you've made excuses for every single incident. Well, I'm done making excuses. You're such a selfish prick, Rachel said, her voice dripping with contempt. It's always about you, isn't it? Your work, your stuff, your precious little space. That hit me like a physical blow. Selfish? Rachel, I've been living with the three of you for 2 years. I've put up with constant noise, constant interruptions, and constant disrespect of my boundaries. I've watched your daughter destroy things and terrorize this household while you made excuses for her. I've said nothing because I didn't want to cause problems for the family. How exactly does that make me selfish? Because you're making a big deal out of nothing, she yelled. It's just a computer. You can replace it. With what money? I asked. I'm a freelance artist, Rachel. I don't have corporate benefits or a steady salary. That equipment represents months of saving. That artwork represents weeks of work that I now have to do over again if I can even get the client to wait. So we'll help you replace it, Mom said, trying to mediate. We'll all chip in. No, I said, this isn't the family's responsibility. This is Rachel and Kevin's responsibility. They're her parents. They're responsible for what she does. She's family, Kevin said. We all look out for each other. Family doesn't deliberately destroy each other's livelihoods, I replied. And family sure as hell doesn't make excuses when someone does. Sophia's crying had escalated to full-blown hysteria at this point. She was wailing and gasping for breath, clinging to Rachel like I was threatening to take her away. Rachel looked at me with pure hatred. Are you happy now? Look at what you've done to her. What I've done to her? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Rachel, your daughter destroyed my workspace with a baseball bat, and somehow I'm the villain because I'm upset about it? You're terrorizing a child, she screamed. I'm holding a child accountable for her actions, I screamed back. The room fell silent, except for Sophia's continued sobbing. Everyone was staring at me like I just revealed myself to be some kind of monster. And in that moment, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. They genuinely believed that I was the problem. They genuinely thought that expecting an 11-year-old to face consequences for deliberate destruction was unreasonable. They genuinely believed that asking parents to take responsibility for their child's behavior was wrong. This wasn't just about the computer. This was about fundamentally different beliefs about responsibility, consequences, and what it means to be part of a family. The ultimatum, here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice deadly calm. You have 1 week to come up with a plan to replace what Sophia destroyed. If you can't do that, then you need to find somewhere else to live. The room erupted again. You can't kick us out, Rachel shouted. This isn't your house. Actually, Mom said quietly, it is. Everyone turned to look at her. She was still standing at the head of the table, looking tired and sad and older than her 58 years. Marcus owns this house, she continued. I transferred the deed to him 3 years ago for tax purposes. He's been letting me live here out of kindness, and he's been letting all of you live here out of generosity. So yes, he absolutely can decide who stays and who goes. I stared at Mom in surprise. I'd forgotten about the deed transfer. It had been a mundane financial decision that we'd made to help with her retirement planning. But she was right. Legally, this was my house. Rachel's face went white. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious, I said. I've put up with 2 years of disrespect, boundary violations, and destructive behavior. I've said nothing because I wanted to keep the peace. But this crosses a line that I can't uncross. Where are we supposed to go? Kevin asked, his anger giving way to panic. That's not my problem, I replied. You're adults. You should have thought about that before you decided that your daughter doesn't need to follow rules or face consequences. Please, Rachel said, and for the first time, her voice was pleading instead of angry. Marcus, please. We don't have anywhere else to go. We can't afford our own place yet. Then you better figure out how to afford it, I said, because you have 1 week. And if we can't, Kevin asked, then I'll start eviction proceedings on Monday. Sophia's crying reached a new level of intensity. She was hyperventilating now, gasping for air between sobs. Look at her! Rachel shouted, gesturing toward her daughter. "Look at what you're doing to her." "What I'm doing to her?" I asked. "Rachel, what she's doing to herself. She's having a meltdown because for the first time in her life, someone is telling her that actions have consequences. She's having a breakdown because you're threatening to make her homeless." Kevin yelled. "I'm not threatening to make anyone homeless," I said. "I'm telling you that if you can't take responsibility for your daughter's behavior, then you can't live in my house anymore." "This is insane," Rachel said, shaking her head. "You're destroying our family over a computer." "I'm not destroying anything," I replied. "Your daughter destroyed my workspace. You refuse to take responsibility for it. Those are choices that you made, not me." "She's just a child," Rachel screamed. "She's your child," I screamed back. "And you're supposed to be teaching her how to behave like a decent human being." "Don't you dare lecture us about parenting," Kevin said. "Someone needs to," I shot back, "because you're clearly not doing it yourselves." Mom stepped between us before things could escalate further. "Stop it," she said firmly. "All of you, just stop." She turned to look at Rachel and Kevin. "He's right," she said quietly. "Sophia needs to face consequences for what she did, and you two need to take responsibility as her parents." "Mom," Rachel said, looking betrayed. "No, Rachel," Mom continued. "I've watched this pattern for 2 years. Sophia does something destructive or disrespectful. You make excuses for her and nothing changes. That's not helping her learn. That's not helping her grow. And it's certainly not fair to Marcus." "So you're taking his side?" Kevin asked. "I'm taking reality's side," Mom replied. "The reality is that your daughter deliberately destroyed thousands of dollars worth of property. The reality is that you need to make that right. The reality is that if you can't do that, then maybe this living arrangement isn't working." Rachel stared at her mother in shock. "I can't believe you're choosing him over your own granddaughter." "I'm not choosing anyone over anyone," Mom said. "I'm choosing what's right over what's easy." And with that, she walked out of the room, leaving the rest of us in stunned silence. The week after. The following week was the longest 7 days of my life. Rachel and Kevin barely spoke to me, communicating only when absolutely necessary and with icy politeness. Sophia avoided me entirely, darting away whenever I entered a room like I was some kind of monster. Mom tried to play peacemaker, suggesting compromises and payment plans, but I held firm. This wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the principle. Sophia needed to learn that destructive behavior has consequences, and Rachel and Kevin needed to learn that enabling that behavior would no longer be tolerated. On Wednesday, Kevin approached me with a proposal. He'd spoken to his brother in Seattle, who was willing to lend them enough money to replace my equipment if I would agree to let them stay. "What about the lost artwork?" I asked. "What about it?" he replied. "I need to be compensated for the weeks of work I lost and the client I'm probably going to lose." "That's ridiculous," Kevin said. "We can't pay you for work you haven't done." "I did do it," I said, "and your daughter destroyed it." "Come on, Marcus. Be reasonable. We're talking about replacing thousands of dollars in equipment. Isn't that enough?" "No," I said. "It's not enough because it's not just about the equipment. It's about teaching Sophia that actions have consequences. If you just replace the stuff she broke without addressing the behavior, what lesson does that teach her?" Kevin stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "The lesson is that mistakes can be fixed." "This wasn't a mistake," I said. "This was a choice, and choices have consequences." He walked away without another word. On Friday, Rachel tried a different approach. She came to my room with Sophia in tow, clearly hoping that seeing her daughter's tear-stained face would soften my resolve. "Sophia has something she wants to say to you," Rachel announced. Sophia looked up at me with red, puffy eyes. "I'm sorry I broke your computer," she said, the words clearly rehearsed. "I know it was expensive and important to you." "Thank you for apologizing," I said. "Do you understand why what you did was wrong?" She nodded eagerly. "Because it made you sad." I felt my heart sink. Even after a week of discussions and consequences, she still didn't get it. She still thought the problem was my emotional reaction, not her deliberate destruction. "No, Sophia," I said gently. "It was wrong because you chose to destroy something that belonged to someone else. It was wrong because you hurt someone's ability to make a living. It was wrong because you acted without thinking about how your choices would affect other people." She stared at me blankly, and I could see that these concepts were still foreign to her. Rachel stepped forward. "She understands," she said quickly. "She knows what she did was wrong. Isn't that enough?" "Does she?" I asked. "Sophia, what would you do if someone came into your room and destroyed all of your toys and art supplies?" "I'd be really mad," she said immediately. "Why?" "Because they're mine." "And how do you think I felt when you destroyed my computer?" She was quiet for a long moment, actually thinking about the question. Then in a small voice, "Mad? Mad and hurt and scared," I said. "Mad because you destroyed something important to me. Hurt because someone I care about chose to hurt me. Scared because I didn't know how I was going to replace what you broke or finish the work I needed to do." For the first time, I saw something like understanding flicker in her eyes. Not complete understanding, but the beginning of it. I didn't want to make you scared, she said quietly. I know you didn't, I said. But you did. And that's why it's so important to think before we act. Our choices affect other people, even when we don't mean them to. She nodded, and for a moment I thought we might actually be making progress. Then Rachel spoke up. See? She gets it. She's sorry, she understands what she did wrong, and she won't do it again. Can we please move past this now? And just like that, the moment was gone. Rachel had turned a teaching opportunity into a bargaining chip, reducing Sophia's growing understanding to a transaction. This isn't about moving past anything, I said. This is about making sure Sophia actually learns from what happened. She has learned, Rachel said defensively. Has she? Because 5 minutes ago, she still thought the problem was that I got sad. It took direct questioning for her to even begin to understand how her actions affected me. That's not learning. That's just saying what she thinks you want to hear. Rachel's face hardened. Fine. You've made your point. You're the perfect uncle who cares about teaching lessons, and we're the terrible parents who just want to sweep things under the rug. Are you happy now? I looked at her, then at Sophia, then back at her. No, Rachel, I'm not happy. I'm heartbroken. Because I love that little girl, and I want her to grow up to be a good person. But the way things are going, that's not what's happening. Rachel grabbed Sophia's hand and pulled her toward the door. Come on, sweetheart, Uncle Marcus doesn't want to talk to us anymore. And once again, she turned me into the villain for trying to hold people accountable for their actions. Sunday, the decision. Sunday evening came without any resolution. Rachel and Kevin had made no progress toward finding alternative housing, and they'd made no acceptable offer to compensate for the damage Sophia had caused. At dinner, Mom made one final attempt at mediation. I've been thinking about this all week, she said, and I have a proposal. What if we set up a payment plan? Rachel and Kevin could pay Marcus back a little bit each month until the debt is settled. How much are we talking about? Kevin asked. About $200 a month, Mom said. It would take a few years, but... A few years, I interrupted. Mom, they destroyed $10,000 worth of equipment and artwork. At $200 a month, it would take over 4 years to pay that back. That's not consequences. That's a mild inconvenience. What do you expect? Rachel asked. We don't have $10,000 sitting around. I expect you to take this seriously, I said. I expect you to understand the magnitude of what happened and respond accordingly. We are taking it seriously, Kevin said. We're offering to pay you back. You're offering to pay me back a fraction of what I lost over a period of several years, I corrected. That's not the same thing. It's better than nothing, Rachel said. No, I said, it's not. Because it teaches Sophia that destructive behavior has minor long-term consequences that barely affect daily life. What lesson does that teach her? It teaches her that families work together to fix problems, Mom said. It teaches her that she can destroy anything she wants as long as Mom and Dad promise to maybe pay for it someday, I replied. The room fell silent. I could see that everyone was tired of this conflict, tired of the tension, tired of the standoff. They just wanted things to go back to normal. But normal was the problem. Normal was Sophia doing whatever she wanted without consequences. Normal was Rachel and Kevin making excuses instead of parenting. Normal was me staying quiet to keep the peace while my boundaries were constantly violated. I need you to pack your things, I said quietly. All of you. I want you out of my house by next Sunday. Marcus, Mom said, her voice pleading. No, Mom, I said. I'm done. This family has made it clear that Sophia's comfort is more important than basic respect for other people. You've made it clear that keeping the peace is more important than addressing destructive behavior. You've made it clear that I'm expected to absorb whatever damage she causes without complaint. That's not fair, Rachel said. You're right, I agreed. It's not fair. None of this is fair. It's not fair that I have to work twice as hard to replace equipment that was deliberately destroyed. It's not fair that I lost a client because I couldn't deliver work that was ruined by an 11-year-old with a baseball bat. It's not fair that I'm the bad guy for expecting parents to parent their child. She's just a kid, Kevin said, falling back on the same tired excuse. She's your kid, I replied, and you're supposed to be raising her to be a decent human being. But instead, you're to believe that other people's property, other people's work, and other people's feelings don't matter as long as she's having fun. I stood up from the table and looked around at my family. My mother, who'd raised me to be responsible and respectful. My sister, who used to share my values before parenthood made her forget them. And my niece, who was growing up to believe that consequences were something that happened to other people. I love all of you, I said, but I can't enable this anymore. Sophia needs to learn that actions have consequences, and you too need to learn that enabling destructive behavior isn't the same as loving your child. And if we refuse to leave? Kevin asked. Then I'll start legal proceedings tomorrow morning, I said. I really don't want to do that, but I will if I have to. Rachel started